Warriors are one of those classes that don't possess any supernatural abilities, they just don't have any magic or crazy superpowers on their side. Regardless, there are still some incredibly notable warriors out there that changed the history of the Warcraft universe forever. So let's take a look at the top 10 most powerful warriors in World of Warcraft. Number 10. Cairn Bloodhoof. Everyone that has played Warcraft has heard about Cairn Bloodhoof, the legendary High Chieftain of the Tauren. However, not many associate him with warriors, mainly due to his peaceful nature and generally calm demeanor. In reality, however, Cairn was gigantic, a lumbering figure, and one of the most dangerous warriors on all of Kalimdor. While we don't know too much about his past, it is almost certain that he had fought the Centaur specifically on many occasions, and those are incredibly dangerous beasts, and he definitely fought them throughout his very long life. Ultimately, he fell in the Mak'gora against Garrosh, one of the greatest warriors of the Horde at the time. He did have the upper hand for most of the duel and would have most likely won had there not been the poison inflicted by Maggot the Grim Totem. Very importantly, keep in mind Cairn was 107 years old, and as far as we know, Tauren don't live that much longer than humans, so the fact that at the age of 107 he was able to battle against a legendary orc warrior in his prime says a lot about his strength. While not much is known, there is no doubt, especially in his youth, Cairn was one of the most dangerous warriors on all of Azeroth. Number 9. Blackhand. Blackhand the Destroyer is essentially what Blizzard had originally planned with the orcs, just ruthless beasts of destruction. Despite his bad reputation, he really wasn't always as evil as he would later seem. Originally, he was just an overall dominating figure. Blackhand was a massive, muscular orc that commanded the Blackrock clan through sheer brutality, force, and power. Few dared to challenge him, and many were afraid of him, which is exactly why he became the war chief of the newfound horde in the first place. Prior to the Drana and the human conflicts, he had battled the ogres and won, and it was said that Blackhand could always turn the tide of battle and could always find the enemy's weakness. However, on Azeroth he didn't fare so well. He faced off the legendary Anduin Lothar and almost lost, and was ultimately killed by his second-in-command Orgrim Doomhammer, who had challenged him to a Mak'gora. Now, Blackhand was mostly notable for his role as a chief and the war chief, but he was also an excellent warrior and had earned his right to lead for the time through force, as was tradition with many orcish clans. While he didn't fare that great in duels later on, keep in mind it was against what history would later know as some of the finest warriors in all of Warcraft. Number 8. Anduin Lothar. Anduin Lothar is like the Achilles of the Alliance. He was a legendary warrior, known by everyone, not just in terms of skill, but prestige as well. He is the descendant of the original Arathi line, the ancient humans, member of the King's Guard, and he fought trolls and was one of the first humans to clash with the invading orcs. During the first war, he became the King's Champion, the highest military rank, and was the leading figure in the Orc-Human War. His knights on missions shocked the orcs and impressed them, as they would wipe out entire orc raiding parties without a single casualty. Anduin himself killed Medivh as he had betrayed the Alliance, a rare feat as Guardians were incredibly powerful. On top of that, during a battle he had nearly slain Warchief Blackhand, and only his Warlocks had saved him from his fate. During the Second War, he was named the Supreme Commander of the newfound Alliance and was a key figure in the orcish defeat. However, ultimately, he was defeated by Orgrim Doomhammer in single combat. Anduin Lothar's importance cannot be stated simply, as he is possibly the most important figure of the entire Alliance. The fact that Anduin Vryn, the king, was named after him says a lot about that. Looking at his history, Anduin was really the best commander, a general, possibly the finest in all of Alliance history. Second to that, he was an incredibly skilled and powerful warrior, facing off against foes much larger, faster, and stronger. He did lose his life in battle ultimately, but keep in mind, he was a really old man at the time, nearing his 60s, and he did quite a good job of defeating orcs in their prime. Number 7. Garrosh Hellscream. The son of a legendary Grom and one of the most powerful orcish warriors in recent times. Now, many might not consider Garrosh one of the strongest, but his fight accounts definitely say otherwise. As he was left behind on Draenor, he was one of the few uncorrupted Mag'gar that we've recently discovered around the time of the Burning Crusade. From that point forth, Garrosh skyrocketed from a depressed random orc to the war chief of the Horde and a key figure of 2 whole expansions. He held his ground against a very experienced troll in the first Makura. He faced off against the Qualdir quite easily in Northrend. Then he defeated Cairn, not fairly, but he did win. Later on, you could observe his strength as he easily lifted orcs with a single hand and cut through Twilight's Hammer cultists like they were nothing. Furthermore, in Mists of Pandaria, he defeated Teranzu. Not easily, but he did do it, and keep in mind, Teranzu is like the strongest monk out there. Ultimately, he fought against Troll once again and easily threw him around, just toyed with him, and was only defeated when the elementals had crushed him. Now, of course, you might say Troll is a shaman, but Troll is also an incredibly powerful warrior, as he used to be a gladiator and is quite large and is very experienced in combat. So, ultimately, Garrosh was really one of the most powerful warriors out there. Huge, strong, the son of Grom, the war chief, and despite being evil, overall, just a badass. Number 6. Orgrim Doomhammer. Orgrim is one of the most notable characters in the entirety of the Warcraft series and really the founding father of the modern Horde. Originally, he was just the son of Telkar, one of the finest warriors of the Blackrock clan, and ultimately he became the second in command to Blackhand in his new Horde. He played a role defeating everything from human armies to ogres to Draenei. Then, in his most notable act, he challenged the war chief to a Makura, defeating him and crushing his skull with a Doomhammer. As the war chief, he had now conquered Stormwind. He also defeated most of the Shadow Council's warlocks and he had subjugated Gul'dan and Shogal. He had actually almost conquered the Alliance, but was ultimately betrayed by Gul'dan, losing the war. Nonetheless, he defeated the legendary Anduin Lothar in combat, shattering his sword and skull. Ultimately, Orgrim was captured, but escaped, and together with Troll he had freed the Horde and led to the creation of what we have today. He died an unceremonious death, stabbed in the back by a knight's lance during a battle, but despite his fall, Orgrim Doomhammer is one of the most accomplished warriors in all of history. Number 5. Varrock Saurfang. When you think of a warrior, Saurfang comes to everyone's mind. This guy is one of the biggest badasses in all of Warcraft and one of the most accomplished warriors, not just of the Horde but of all time and of all races. Varrock was literally in every war that involved the Horde since their departure of Draenor, from the battles against the Draenei to the first and the second war, to the second war of the Shifting Sands, to the Northern campaign, and essentially every other battle or skirmish that happened. He was everything from the second in command of the war chief to a supreme commander. Keep in mind, he wasn't just in these wars, he wasn't just present, but he was also in some of the toughest battles out there, fighting in the thick of it. Also, through most of it, he has been pretty old. Troll even passed him up for war chief in favor of Garrosh due to his old age. This, of course, is a major thing, as was never really in his prime during his battles, and age is a really important factor for warriors, as their bread and butter is their body and skills. We've seen Saurfang fight literally everyone from humans to the Kiraji to demons to undead, and against dozens of opponents at the same time, and he had prevailed in all of these battles outside of a single one. He went into a Makura against Sylvanas and lost, and even then he managed to get a cut in, despite Sylvanas being just insanely overpowered. Ultimately, Varrock Saurfang died in battle, but behind he left a legacy that no one can really top, being a warrior unlike no other. Number 4. Varian Vryn. While most know Varian as the King of Stormwind and really the leader of the Alliance, he was in fact an insanely powerful warrior and one of the best on all of Azeroth. Varian grew up during the Orcish invasions and had to mature very early, and as he became king, times were just never easy for him. At one point he was kidnapped and forced to become a gladiator, and he had to free himself by fighting through everyone. We've seen Varian take down an elemental with his bare hands, cut down elite Orcish soldiers, demons, ogres, and all sorts of other monstrosities. He was actually blessed by the spirit of the ancient Golden and is one of the rare enhanced warriors, meaning that he had essentially unlimited stamina and had his senses heightened. Really, Varian was a human warrior warrior with the power of a Vorgan. With his alter ego Logosh, it was said that fighting him was like fighting two people at once, and to put it simply, he was just a superhuman. Ultimately, Varian was defeated by Gul'dan as he had cut down many demons and jumped from the battleship, being ultimately almost completely dissolved by Gul'dan. As, of course, Gul'dan had more power than ever and was the last chance of the Legion, and Kil'jaeden just poured everything into him just to take Azeroth, as this was their last chance. It was no shame to lose to such a powerhouse. Overall, Varian Vryn will go down in history as one of the finest and the most powerful warriors in all of Azeroth. Number 3. Grom Hellscream. Much like Saurfang, Grommash is just a synonym for a warrior. Even before the war, Grom was one of the most fearsome warriors and the chieftain of the Warsong clan, one of the strongest orcish clans on Drandy. First, he led raids into the Ogre lands, defeated many of them, and when captured and tortured, he survived, proving to be one of the strongest willed orcs of all time, an orc with an iron will. Grom was one of the first to take the Blood of Manroth, to fight the Draenei, to fight the humans, and one of the rare orcs that together with his clan was never actually put into internment camps and instead raided human lands and practiced guerrilla warfare, while at the same time battling remnants of the demonic curse. Later on, Grom, together with Orgrim and Troll, freed the Horde and ultimately sailed to Kalimdor. There, as he battled through endless foes, he ultimately, once again, drank the blood of Manroth and became a fell orc. This time, he managed to slay the demigod Cenarius, which in itself is a feat unimaginable by most mortals. After once again being freed from the demonic curse, he struck out at Manroth and actually defeated the Pit Lord, losing his life in the process. Keep in mind, this is an incredible achievement as Manroth was the strongest Pit Lord out there and only a few Demon Lords were ahead of him in terms of power. Overall, Grommash went down in history as one of the most accomplished orcs, most powerful warriors, defeating everything from ogres to humans to demons. Number 2. Broxigar. Broxigar the Red is the brother of Erok Saurfang and possibly the most badass orc that ever lived. He was a veteran of the First, Second and the Third War and had participated in some of the toughest battles out there. He is essentially the Leonidas of Warcraft, as during the Third War he held a vital mountain pass against armies of demons and was ultimately the only person to survive the encounter. He never forgave himself for the cowardice of surviving his comrades in battle and therefore searched for a glorious death himself. He suddenly traveled back in time to the War of the Ancients and played one of the most important roles in the conflict. Broxigar was given the Axe of Cenarius and the Night Elves were just blown away by his fighting skills. In the final battle over the Well of Eternity, Broxigar leapt through the portal, arrived on Argus and proceeded to just slaughter demons left and right that ultimately he stood atop a mountain of their corpses. He was so badass that this caught the attention of Sargeras himself, who decided to come over and to end his life. Broxigar, confident, leapt and wounded the leader of the Burning Legion. Now, it was a tiny wound, but ultimately this bought just enough time to destabilize the portal, ending Sargeras' venture. Broxigar was easily killed by Sargeras, but he went down in history, through alternate history, as one of the most glorious orcs that ever lived. I know I may get some flack for placing Broxigar second on this list, and I do believe it is high enough, and he really is the most powerful orc that ever lived, although the enhanced axe did play a role, and we don't know if other orcs like Grom or his brother Varrock might have just done the same thing if they had the chance. And lastly, number 1. Toronar. As far as we know, the most powerful warrior to have ever lived. Toronar was the king of the Eldrachi, an ancient warrior race of an unknown planet. Toronar himself was from a line of respected and distinguished fighters, and both he and his brother were one of the greatest of all time. Only the strongest within their society carried the warblades, and Toronar did everything to achieve that right. Aside from years of brutal training, he ultimately faced his own brother in a duel to the death and killed him without uttering a single word. Now, like the Eredar, who were one of the most intelligent races in the universe, the Eldrachi were a warrior race and one of the strongest. What they both had in common was that Sargeras sought them out out due to their talents. Initially, they destroyed their planet and slaughtered them, but the Eldrazi held on, especially Tornar, slaying thousands of demons with the Legion observing that he was an army unto himself. Ultimately, however, before the final destruction, the offensive stopped and Sargeras, either himself or an avatar, approached him. He offered them to join the Legion, but Tornar refused and engaged in a duel that lasted seemingly forever. Tornar was a decent match, but he realized that he could not best Sargeras and that he is being toyed around with, so he feigned submission. As Sargeras let his guard down and listened, Tornar struck with his warblades and ripped through his hide, drawing molten blood. Despite being only a minor injury, outside of later on Roxgar the Red, it was the only time Sargeras ever took damage. Tornar was subsequently destroyed, his entire race was just demolished and their entire homeworld. Outside of that information, we know next to nothing about Eldrazi, neither their appearance nor when they actually lived and what was their planet. Still, even with this very limited information, Tornar went down in history as the greatest and the most accomplished warrior of all time. Death Knights are a relatively recent addition to the Warcraft universe, but they're one of the most unique and the most badass classes in the game. There are multiple generations of Death Knights, each of them being different, especially the first when compared to the later ones, but all of them incredibly powerful in their own way. All Death Knights used to be something else before becoming what they are now, and in Undeath they are enhanced beings, much more cruel, resilient, and capable of wielding necromantic magic. So, what are the most powerful Death Knights in the lore? Number 10. Falric and Marvin. I know this is not one character, but these two guys are quite similar. So both Falric and Marvin were captains and essentially the left and the right hand of Arthas. Falric was the son of a farmer that joined the Royal Guard, while Marvin was also a member. Despite Arthas being their superior, both of them were his close friends and were extremely loyal. They followed him from the investigation of the plague and the meeting with Jaina to the purge and even to the icy lands of Northrend. While Arthas searched for Frostmourne to defeat Mal'Ganis, they were in charge of defending their camp from the never-ending siege at the hands of Mal'Ganis. Ultimately, they helped defeat the Dreadlord, but suddenly Arthas just disappeared into the wilderness. Falric was the one to search for him first, and as soon as he found him, he was killed and raised as a Death Knight. Soon enough, Marvin joined them as well, and the entire army that had followed Arthas. Since then, they had served Arthas, and we actually faced off against them in the Halls of Reflection in the Icecrown Citadel, where they were ultimately defeated, and now they will be making a new appearance in the Shadowlands. While we don't know too much about their actual power levels, being so close to Arthas in life and in death, they can't be anything other than just powerful. Number 9. Nazgrim. Nazgrim was one of the greatest generals of the New Horde and even the Horde overall. He started as a sergeant back in Grizzly Hills, but he was quickly promoted as he participated in literally everything since. As a legionnaire, he was sent to Vashir, and after success there, he became a general and was the main leader of the Horde forces in the invasion of Pandaria. There, he was crucial in every mission against the Shah, the Alliance, and everyone else that threatened the Horde. Ultimately, we were the ones that had to kill him in the Siege of Orgrimmar, as well he disagreed with Garrosh. His orcish honor bound him to the war chief, and he stood by his side until the very end. While not right, it's not a hill you wanna die on, you can't really blame him for respecting his warrior code. Then, as we needed every help we can get, the Lich King decided to raise him as a member of the new Four Horsemen. Immediately he is thrown into the fray, and he seemed quite dominant, easily strangulating and cutting down foes from the Scarlet Crusaders to demons. Nazgrim was a part of the Battle of the Broken Shore and will be playing a role within the Shadowlands, not certain what role exactly, but after all, he is one of the Four Horsemen now. Number 8. Sally Whitemane. A very tragic character and initially just a priestess of the light. At a certain point in time, she became the High Inquisitor of the Scarlet Crusade, and as the Crusaders began to quickly slip away into insanity, she became a serious thorn in the side of both the Alliance and the Horde. When the Scarlet Crusade was at the peak of their power, they could launch expeditions and invasions and were quite a significant force. She was one of the most powerful and influential figures on Azeroth. However, the Scarlet Crusade began quite rapidly falling apart, and she survived all of those troubles until the time of Mists of Pandaria, when Sally was defeated by Lillian Voss, unable to resurrect herself. Then, around Legion, recently she was resurrected, but this time as a Death Knight and a third member of the new Four Horsemen. Together with the rest of the elite Death Knights, she attempted to resurrect Tyrion, helped us on the Broken Shore, and will now play a role in the Shadowlands. So, Sally Whitemane has gone a full circle, from a tragic young girl to a priestess to a maniac to a major villain to now helping us as a Death Knight. Seeing that Whitemane has been on both sides of life and death coin many times, she will no doubt be quite useful in the Shadowlands. Number 7. Theron Gorefiend. Theron is different than all the other Death Knights, but I had to include him because he was the Death Knight, the most powerful of the first generation. Theron Gore was a respected shaman of the Shadowmoon Council that got close to Gul'dan and became a warlock, being one of the most powerful ones in the entire horde. Eventually, Gul'dan took Deathstorming Knights, sacrificed Theron and imbued his spirit with the Knights, reviving Theron Gore as Theron Gorefiend. From that point, he served the horde with powerful necromantic energies, sort of new energies, and ultimately, after the war, he returned to Draenor. There, Theron gathered the artifacts for Ner'zhul and actually rode on the back of Deathwing himself to fulfill his ultimate plan. However, as he returned to Draenor again, he faced off against Terrellian, fell in battle, but his spirit rose from the broken body and just escaped. Mysteriously, he returned again, and in some way, we don't know what way exactly, he joined Illidan, and we had to face off against him at the Black Temple. There, he said that the Wheel of Death has spun for him many times, and that it will spin again, which makes it seem like he might return at some point, and the Shadowlands seem like that point. No one really knows how he worked exactly, what powered him, but it is certain that Theron Gorefiend was one of the most powerful first generation Death Knights, and really the prototype for what was to come. Number 6. Thoras Trollbane. The former king of Stromgarde and a direct descendant of the Trollbane bloodline, the most notable human lineage that dates back before human kingdoms were even a thing. Thoras was as royal as you can get. He was a natural warrior, a dominant king, and played a very important role in the Orcish Wars, leading his troops personally in many battles and claiming victories in the most critical of times. However, after the war with the interminate camps and disagreements on taxes, Stromgarde split from the Alliance of Lordaeron, and at some point the king was murdered by his son, who had claimed the throne for himself. For years he was buried in the crypt, but during Legion, the Knights of the Ebon Blade decided to raise him as one of the new Four Horsemen. Subsequently, he participated in all major missions, from the battles on the Broken Shore to the attempted resurrection of Tyrion Fordring. Currently, Thoras is still an active member and will no doubt be important in the Shadowlands. As a human, he was said to be the largest and the physically strongest king of the Alliance. He was an impressive warrior as well as a leader, which is exactly what the Death Knights decided to seek him out of all the other fallen heroes in desperate times. While proven to an extent, we are yet to see what Trollbane can do as a Death Knight and how he will continue his bloodline's legacy. Number 5. Alexandros Mograine. The Ashbringer and one of the greatest paladins that ever existed. Alexandros was a veteran of the Orcish Wars and one of the biggest enemies of the Scourge of Lordaeron as he wiped them out left and right. One day, however, he was surrounded by a whole undead army that he managed to obliterate all by himself, but as he fell from fatigue, he was stabbed by his son Renaud, who was in turn manipulated by Annette Rezi. Kel'Thuzad raised Mograine as a Death Knight, took him to Naxxramas, and he became a member of the first Four Horsemen, the most elite of all the Death Knights. He was ultimately freed by his son Darion, that defeated him and ultimately sacrificed himself in order to free the soul of his father. Alexandros' soul was once again claimed by Frostmourne at the battle for Lightscope Chapel, but was subsequently freed. Now Alexandros is placed in Maldraxxus in the Shadowlands, and we will see him in the new expansion. While Mograine hasn't really done all that much as a Death Knight, Alexandros was a veteran, a legendary paladin and a warrior, a one-man army, and ultimately one of the most powerful Death Knights that ever existed. Number 4. Dranosh Saurfang. Dranosh is definitely a better warrior than he was a Death Knight, but his warrior skills 100% translated as he was only enhanced in Undeath. The Heart of Draenor, as his father named him, he is the son of the legendary Orc warrior Varrock and the nephew of the even more legendary Broxigar the Red. He was loved by his people and even by Troll, who considered him as a primary option for a war chief, calling him the brightest star in the sky of horde warriors. During the campaign against the Lich King, he led the offensive into Northrend and was quite successful powerful, but ultimately he fell at the Rat Gate. As he charged Arthas, he was slain in one strike. His soul was taken as he was raised as Deathbringer Saurfang. He was said to have been the most powerful Death Knight of the Lich King and was probably a personal favorite of Arthas, although that might be a bit exaggerated to bring up some flavor text for the Ice Crown Citadel. Now, not to discount him as he was incredibly powerful, he easily just starved the Horde warriors, including one of the most powerful ones, his father, Verok Saurfang. This act alone means he as a Death Knight was many times more powerful than as a warrior, and he was quite a powerful warrior. Ultimately, we defeated him, he was given proper burial rites, and Dranosh is remembered as one of the most tragic characters of the Horde, a promising orc with a bright future that fell in battle against the Lich King. Number 3. Darien Mograine. Darien is a troubled soul, a paladin, and one of the greatest Death Knights ever known. He is the son of Alexandros Mograine. He fought the undead of Lordaeron and was dedicated to free his father's soul from the corrupted Ashbringer. He charged Kel'Thuzad himself in a last-ditch effort to do an act of love greater than the act of evil, and he plunged the Ashbringer into his own chest, seemingly freeing his father's sword and damning himself to undeath. Darien was made the High Lord of the Death Knights of Arcturus, and he had now worked for the Lich King. Then, under the Lich King's control, he attacked Lightscope Chapel, this time on the other side, and in doing so, he rebelled and gave the Ashbringer to Tyrion. Mograine then led the newly freed Death Knights, and he helped us defeat his former master, the Lich King. The son of Alexandros then made a pact with Bolvar, attempting to raise Tyrion Fordring, failed and was killed, then was resurrected once again. However, in the process, he managed to easily subdue some of the most powerful paladins like Maxwell. In the Shadowlands, he will play a role, but is no longer the High Lord of the Ebon Blade as he has stepped down. Now, he is the leader of the Four Horsemen, the most elite of the Death Knights, and really is one of the best fighters that Death Knights have to offer. Number 2. Bolvar Fordragon. The ruler of Stormwind in the absence of Varian Bryn, and one of the greatest paladins of all time. As he led the alliance at the Red Gate, he fell and only survived due to the dragon's flames. Then he was tortured mercilessly by Arthas, but managed to survive and keep a state between life and death. It is uncertain when exactly he became a Death Knight because he didn't go through the traditional process as a Death Knight would, nor did he ever serve Arthas as a Death Knight. When Arthas fell, Bolvar immediately took the throne and became the Lich King. He was never nearly as powerful as Arthas, as the Scourge was significantly weakened at that point, but he still had quite a bit of influence. Bolvar came to the new agreement with the Ebon Blade, empowered them and collaborated, attempting to strengthen his position, as he most likely knew what was coming and what was going on with the Jailer. He helped us against the Legion, raised new Death Knights, and ultimately he faced off against Sylvanas. While Bolvar did offer some resistance, he couldn't really do a thing against Jailer-empowered Sylvanas, and therefore he lost the crown, and the Lich King was no more. Now he is the leader of the Ebon Blade and is really the primary active Death Knight. We've never really seen him in combat, so it is hard to offer concrete data on how powerful he is, but look at it this way, one of the strongest paladins, a guy that survived the worst torture ever, he survived that plague that was thrown by the Forsaken, the Lich King for many years, and now a Death Knight. As Bolvar, he has been on all sides of life. He is at the very least an elite Death Knight, and at the most the strongest currently active Death Knight on all of Azeroth. And lastly, number 1, Arthas Menethil. The Death Knight, the favorite of Ner'zhul, a fallen prince that turned into the Lich King. Originally, Arthas was an apprentice paladin and a very skilled warrior, but his true power would only show after death. As he took on Frostmourne and defeated Morganis, Arthas was consumed and became the heir to the Lich King. He was the personal favorite of Ner'zhul and ultimately his only hope. Arthas was significantly empowered by his master as he killed his father and with relative ease dismantled Lordaeron. Then he invaded Quel'Thalas, killed the Elven King Anasterion in single combat, an elf that had thousands of years of experience, as well as defeated Sylvanas and raised her. She too was quite experienced. Then he invaded Dalaran, killed literally the strongest mage at the time, Antonidas, and then battled Illidan in a duel, being quite equally matched. Subsequently, as he was called by Ner'zhul to take over the throne, he was getting progressively weaker, he still nonetheless dominated everyone in his path. Arthas faced off a Forgotten One and defeated the army of Illidan, Kil'tas, and Lady Vash. Ultimately, just as he was about to reach the throne, he defeated Illidan in a duel. Sure, Illidan wasn't as powerful as he is now, but this is literally the Jailer of Sageras and an ancient demonic being. Arthas then became a Lich King, and we can't really count that because that is hardly a Death Knight, but if we do, he then defeated even more people, raised like almost everyone on this list, including the dragons in Dragosa, killed Ranosh in a single blow, and defeated all of us. So yeah, if you haven't figured it out by now, Arthas was literally the most powerful Death Knight that we have ever known, seen, and that we'll most likely ever even see. As servants of the light, Paladins have existed throughout the entire cosmos, from the Draenei to humans to even the Natrazim. While different and diverse, they're all quite similar, focused on serving, helping, and fighting. There's something of a mix between a priest and a warrior, and while having the fate of a priest, they also possess the strength of a warrior. However, looking at all the major and important characters and the entire universe, who are the strongest Paladins around? Number 10. Arthas Menethil. Despite being known by everyone as a Lich King, Arthas was actually a really promising paladin back when he was the Prince of Lordaeron. As the son of Terenas Menethil, Arthas was the heir to the throne of Lordaeron and was inducted into the Knights of the Silver Hand at the age of 19 in Stormwind City. It was quite a big deal at the time, as figures such as Alonsus Fowl, Gan Greymane, Thoras Trollbane, Daelin Proudmoore were present, and he was blessed by the most notable paladins around: Uther, Saidan, Tyrion, and Gavin Rad. Despite being a servant of the light and also very young, he was also one of the best warriors in all the lands, sparring with Veri and Vryn, defeating orcs and trolls with his skills, and later on even the undead. Unfortunately, his hot-headedness and arrogance led to his demise, and Arthas became a Death Knight and a Lich King, having abandoned the light. While he was very young when compared to others, he was in fact a really capable paladin, and he did actually defeat all of his enemies. His only problem was that he was not really too wise, and therefore he fell into the trap. In my opinion, Arthas was much more of a warrior paladin, and he excelled at that aspect, while his faith in the light and will was much weaker when compared to his peers. Number 9. Lady Liadrin. Originally, Lady Liadrin was a high priestess and really one of the rare servants of the light amongst the elves. As a priest, she participated in the battle against the Amani and the horrific fall of Quel'Thalas against the Undead Scourge. Due to the absolute slaughter of the elves, she became disillusioned with the light and in a way abandoned it. However, as Anaru was kidnapped by Kel'Thas and taken to Quel'Thalas, she created a brand new order of paladins, the Blood Knights, that siphoned the light by force from the Naru, which was quite unique and kinda foolish from this current perspective. However, a few years later, she redeemed herself and her people by reigniting the Sunwell and turning to the right side of the light. Subsequently, she turned her attention to the Scourge and ultimately the destruction of the Legion, playing a key role in the very recent process. As Liadrin was a part of Battle for Azeroth, she will no doubt also be relevant within the Shadowlands, as at the moment, Liadrin is one of the most notable paladins that we have, and one of the most important Horde Blood Elven paladins, or better yet, a Blood Knight. Number 8. Bolvar Fordragon. So, Bolvar was never really a highly accomplished paladin, but his will was something that very few on Azeroth ever possessed. Originally, Fordragon was a venerated paladin of the Alliance, and his most important role was as a ruler of Stormwind in the absence of Varian Vryn. Then, his time to shine was during the battle against the Lich King, as at first he defended Stormwind from the Scourge surprise attack, and then he led the Northern campaign, ultimately laying siege to the very gates of the Ice-Crown Citadel. Due to the betrayal of the Forsaken and the meddling of Verimatris, he fell and almost died, but was saved by Dragon's Flames. Then he was captured by the Lich King and tortured mercilessly. This is exactly why I'm placing him on this list, because he was never actually broken, despite being on the actual brink of death, and this was not your regular torture, as the Lich King, Arthas, definitely knew what weak points to push to get someone to submit. From that point forward, Bolvar would serve as the Lich King, and now will be a major player in the Shadowlands. Now, despite no crazy achievements as a paladin, his indomitable will is something very paladin-like, and also something only the strongest believers would be able to endure. Number 7. Alexandros Mograine. The Ashbringer. Alexandros is one of the most distinguished human paladins of all time. A veteran of the Orcish Wars, he acquired the famous blade by using an orb of an Orc Warlock. As a member of the Silver Hand, he was instrumental in the struggle against the Lich King and the defense of Lordaeron. He swore to defeat the undead and free his homeland, and was actually so successful in that resistance that he became a thorn in the side of Kel'Thuzad and the Dreadlords. So, in order to defeat him, because they couldn't do it in regular combat, the Nat regime corrupted his son Renaud. During a trap in Stratholme, Alexandros was completely surrounded by a massive group of undead, but standing alone, he managed to destroy every single one of them with the aid of the light, one after the other. Unfortunately, after he dropped his blade due to fatigue, he was stabbed in the back by his son, ultimately becoming a dead knight. His soul was subsequently freed when his son Darien plunged the Ashbringer into his own chest, and currently, as far as we know, the spirit of Mograine is within Maldraxxus. Why that is a bit confusing at this point in time, and we will find out soon enough, but Alexandros no doubt is one of the greatest servants of the light that ever lived, a defender of Lordaeron, and an exceptional paladin. Number 6. Lothraxion. Really, the most unique paladin out there, as well as one of the most confusing ones. So, Lothraxion is a Dreadlord, a Nat regime, and was a member of the Legion that hunted down creatures of the Void. As he was defeated by the Void Locust Walker and spared, he saw a new purpose and joined the Grand Army of the Light led by Xera, and was completely changed, having been almost entirely infused by the new light energy. Now he is a high commander of the army, and he is powerful, not just because he is as close to the light source as you can get, but because he is also an ancient Nat regime, and they are one of the most devious and powerful beings in the universe. He helped us defeat Sargeras, and honestly, everyone was shocked that a Dreadlord could become a paladin and a servant of the light. However, now with the new Shadowlands spoiler lore, it might turn out that he never served the Legion nor the light, and that he is working for someone entirely different, and that it was all a ruse, although none of this is actually confirmed at this point in time. Despite all of that, a paladin, Nat regime, high commander of the Grand Army of the Light can't be anything other than just straight out powerful. Number 5. Marad. Despite not being among the first on the list, Marad is actually one of the most powerful paladins in the universe, if not for anything but his age. We don't know exactly how old Marad is, but must be thousands of years old, and by that fact alone he is a lot more experienced than the humans, having been a servant of the light for many millennia. We know that he fought the Legion on many occasions in the past, and that he also battled the Orcs in Draenor, but in that defense he failed due to his thirst for vengeance. From that point forward, he has searched for a way to make up for that, being quite aggressive for a Draenei, preferring offense to meditation. He participated in the Northern Campaign and was an instructor of the light for the Alliance races on Azeroth, bringing much greater clarity. Ultimately, he confusingly died in the alternate universe in the new battle for Shatterat, as he was killed by Blackhand while protecting Yrel. Despite his tragic death, he did ultimately redeem himself, losing his life as a servant of the light and a protector of his people. Number 4. Yrel. So, Yrel is a relatively new character and was completely unimportant initially. We encountered her as a slave and had freed her, and prior to that she was a promising healer that caught the eye of Velen, but nothing really too out of the ordinary. However, as time went on, her role became greater and greater. First, she helped us on a few missions, but then she played a part in almost everything we did on Alternate Draenor, fighting everything from orcs to ogres, to even nearly defeating Blackhand. Ultimately, Yrel participated in the battle against the Burning Legion and helped us defeat Archimonde. Now, from that point forward, nothing is known, until suddenly a lot of time passes on Alternate Draenor, and we learn that she has now become a leader of the Lightbound, the fanatical Draenei that essentially took over Draenor, serving the Light Mother. Aside from that, we know nothing about her and whether we will actually see her again. While she hasn't proven herself that much as a paladin, Yrel is literally the leader of an entire planet right now, ruled by the light, and I'd say probably the most powerful person on Alternate Draenor. If we do see her again, I think Yrel will be much more than just a lost priestess. Number 3. Uther. When you think of a paladin, you really think of Uther the Lightbringer. He was a dedicated follower from his youth, as well as an accomplished knight. During the Orcish War, as the priests realized that fate is not enough, the Order of Paladins was formed, combining martial prowess, as well as the belief in the light. The first Order of the Silver Hand was created, and Uther was one of the 5 founding paladins, as well as their leader later on. Uther played a key role in the Orcish invasion, and even the greatest knights were in awe of him and his ability to smash orcs and heal fallen fallen allies, at the same time earning his title, the Lightbringer. As the war concluded, the order spread and more paladins were trained and added, but really, Uther was a pioneer of the class on Azeroth. As the Scourge invasion began, he was the first on the front line, seeking the plague and defending against the undead, defending Lordaeron, but ultimately, he fell against his former student, Arthas. A portion of his soul was taken by Frostmourne, while the other was sent to Bastion, and he became a Kyrian that will play a key role in the Shadowlands. Uther is one of the most dedicated paladins to have ever lived, with an unshakable belief in the light, and through that dedication and skills, he has without a doubt proven that. Number 2. Tyrion Fordring. The High Lord, or better known as the guy that defeated the Lich King. Originally, Tyrion was a skilled warrior and was knighted at a very young age of 18, while at the same time being a follower of the light. Due to his skill, he was chosen as one of the 5 original Paladins of the Silver Hand, and he played a crucial role in the Second Fall. Subsequently, he was Lord of Merdenhold Keep until he stood up for the Orc Etherig and was thus exiled. Now, he reappeared following the death of his son with the formation of the Argent Crusade, essentially reforming the old Silver Hand. Then, he led the offensive into Northrend against the Scourge, and his role was instrumental. Without him, it is highly likely that we would have actually lost. Despite being crucial in the minor campaigns, he actually participated in the battle against Arthas when he, with the Ashbringer, defeated the Lich King and saved us all. With that done, Tyrion returned to the Plaguelands to fight the remnants of the Scourge, but peace was quite short-lived as the Burning Legion invaded only a few years later. He once again led the Argent Crusade, but this time he failed. He resisted the giant Croesus and even survived, but ultimately the light could not save him from the terrible torture he would receive. While Tyrion Fordring was an exceptional warrior and a paladin, the reason I'm placing him second is due to his dedication to the light. He was 100% devoted, and it had saved him on many occasions. Despite dying in the battle against the Legion, he endured such insane damage that only his fate could allow, and literally no one else would be able to accomplish such a feat. And lastly, number 1, Tyrellian. Tyrellian is like the uber paladin, and I'd really say the most accomplished one ever. Originally, he was nothing too different from Uther or Tyrion. Tyrellian was amongst the first 5 paladins of the Silver Hand, and was actually a priest before he turned into a paladin. Tyrellian played an insanely important role in the Orcish War, and is one of the reasons the humans even managed to win, as after the death of Anduin Lothar, he rallied the Alliance armies against the Orcs. Then, he led the Sons of Lothar to put an end to the Horde on Draenor, and when the planet was destroyed, he was seemingly lost forever. Following his disappearance, he encountered the Naruk Sera and became a member of the Army of the Light, ultimately becoming a commander of the said army and a leader. Now, as time worked differently in the alternate reality, he spent millennia fighting the Legion and serving the Light, and despite not being too different in terms of age when compared to Uther, for example, Tyrellian has thousands of years of experience, and he has worked with the Light closer than almost anyone else. Recently, he returned, helped us defeat Sargeras and conquer Argus, and he also rejoined the Alliance once again, becoming a champion of it. Tyrellian is the hero of the Alliance, a living legend, and I'd say the most important paladin currently active. As opposed to others, he leads the Army of the Light and is as close to the source as you can get, having a much deeper understanding than what, for example, the humans back on Azeroth had. Because of this, I'd say Tyrellian is the most powerful paladin that we know. As I've previously stated, Warlocks are one of the most powerful classes in the game, if not the most powerful one. At the same time, Warlocks are also one of the most unstable and risky classes due to being so incredibly potent and often prone to insanity. From cosmic beings such as Kil'jaeden to Orc Warlocks, they have left an incredible mark upon World of Warcraft. Utilizing mainly Fel energy along with other potent magics, what are the most powerful Warlocks in the lore? Number 10. Zuluhead the Whacked. As the Orcs were influenced by the force of the Burning Legion, they were cut off from the elements, and shamans and mass turned to demonic magics, becoming Warlocks. Zuluhead the Whacked was one of the few, if not the last remaining shaman of the entire Horde due to distrust for Gul'dan and his general power, but ultimately, he too eventually succumbed to dark magics. Zuluhead was incredibly loyal to Blackhand, later on pledged allegiance to the Dragonwall clan, and despite working for the Sons of Blackhand, he also aided Doomhammer. In particular, he came into the possession of the fabled Demon Soul, which ultimately helped subjugate the Red Dragon fight. Zulukhed directed the Horde to take over the Blackrock Mountain and followed the Horde in battle against the High Elves of Quel'Thalas. After the Second War and the failure of the Horde, he ventured back to Draenor, survived the destruction, and at an unknown point in time pledged what remained of his clan to Illidan. There, using his experience, he had enslaved the Netherwing dragons, but was ultimately defeated. Zulukhed was one of the most powerful Orc Warlocks, maybe even close to Gul'dan, but of course was not nearly as empowered by the Legion. Number 9. Kenritad Ebonlock. One of the most notable and curious human warlocks. He was present as an alliance member during the battle against Illidan at the top of Black Temple, and since then he was just obsessed with gaining more and more power. He wanted to learn about how Illidan managed to control demons despite not being a member of the Burning Legion himself. Additionally, after the fall of Deathwing, he formed the Council of the Black Harvest with the greatest warlocks of Azeroth. After learning about the power left by Ragnaros and Cho'Gall, he ventured to Outland once again to continue his mission to search for more power. Unfortunately, his curiosity was his downfall as he absorbed too much fel and was corrupted, turning into a monstrous demonic form. Kenritad was defeated, banished, and later returned back to the fold once again to serve the Council of the Black Harvest, helping us defeat the Burning Legion. Despite being defeated, he is one of the most notable and was one of the most powerful warlocks of Azeroth. He literally enslaved a pit lord and turned him into a minion and controlled an army of demons, essentially turning into like a discount mini Illidan. Number 8. Merrill Fellstorm. Merrill is literally one of the most unique characters in the entire game. He is nearly 3,000 years old, essentially the oldest human ever, if he can even be considered a human at this point. We know that he fought in the ancient troll wars thousands of years ago, and it is speculated that he is among the first 100 human mages taught by the elves. He was killed in the war against the trolls, but managed to stay alive in an undead form as his task was too great. So he is one of the first undead ever on Azeroth that we know, neither a Forsaken nor having anything to do with the Scourge. Merrill Winterstorm was one of the founding members of the Council of Tirisfal and was later a mentor of the son of Medivh, Medan. Now, just to show you how badass this guy is best seen by the fact that he allowed a Dreadlord to possess him so that the two wills could battle each other inside his head. He did win, but unfortunately the corruption started to set in. He exiled himself and changed his name to Fellstorm, but unfortunately his demon returned in Legion as the Dreadlord attacked Dalaran. Ultimately though, he was freed from the corruption, he reformed the Tirisgard, the elite mage guard of Dalaran, and helped us defeat the Legion. Now, I know he's about the Mage Order Hall, but as always, the classes are never black and white in the lore. He was one of the first human mages, more than likely, but first off, he was undead, which means he must have dabbled in necromancy. He literally had a demon inside him, which not even warlocks tend to do, and his old action figure was him literally just wearing a warlock set. So, despite his class not being too clear, Merrill Fellstorm is one of the most powerful warlocks in Azeroth, as well as one of the most experienced. Number 7. Ner'zhul. Chieftain of the Shadowmoon clan and one of the finest shamans in all of Orcish history. His lore is incredibly confusing due to a million different retcons, but we know that he wasn't really that bad of a guy and that he was tricked by Kil'jaeden and Gul'dan, leading the Horde to form and ultimately to their doom. Eventually, Ner'zhul became a warlock and he remained on Draenor, ultimately becoming a war chief of the remaining clans, attempting to open portals to new worlds for the Horde to invade. His spells and portals were so powerful that they literally tore the planet apart. As he attempted to escape, he was taken away by Kil'jaeden, tortured, and turned into the very first Lich King. Then, as a Lich King, he did the entire Scourge thing and the Plague of Undeath, nearly conquering half the planet, although not sure how much of that can really be attributed to his personal skills or anything to do with warlocks, but nonetheless, Ner'zhul was behind most. He wasn't that much of a fighter, so we really don't have a million different scenarios where he was defeating enemies left and right, but seeing that Kil'jaeden sought to use him as a Lich King and that he was such a key figure, Ner'zhul is one of the most influential shamans and warlocks. Number 6. Shogal. One of the rare two-headed high ogres, thought to have been one of the most intelligent of all of them. So intelligent in fact that the ruling elite saw him as an enemy and wanted to just assassinate him. However, Shogal found Gul'dan, learned Fel, and learned about the Pale Orcs and the Void. Then, with his arcane expertise, Fel magic, and Void energies, he tied and burned the Imperator Margok alive. Shogal was one of the key members of the Old Horde and thought to have been among the most powerful ones as well. He led the Void cult together with Gul'dan, but ultimately was nearly killed as his master died. Following the Tome of Sargeras, he ventured to Kalimdor, where he heeded the calls of the Old Gods. There, he took over the Twilight's Hammer and nearly managed to summon an Old God, but was ultimately defeated by Medan. Shogal survived this ordeal and continued furthering the cult. He had enslaved elementals, summoned what is thought to be a forgotten one, and greatly expanded the Twilight's Hammer. However, ultimately, he was defeated by the Adventurers. Despite failing, Shogal is just out of this world, like literally out of this world. An intelligent mage, a warlock, a necromancer, and a practitioner of every possible dark magic under the sun. Seeing that he himself defeated the Emperor of the Ogres, one of the most powerful characters on Draenor, and he had great command over both arcane, fel, and void magics, Shogal is one of the greatest warlocks of both Azeroth and Draenor. Number 5. Medivh. One of the greatest characters of the Warcraft series, a guardian, a mage, a necromancer, and a warlock. It is hard to really classify him, but he can definitely be classified as a warlock by the definition, at least among other things. So, Medivh is the son of Adrian, one of the most powerful mages ever, was the last guardian that was possessed by the spirit of Sargeras since birth. While his role was instrumental, I do feel like his strength is a bit overblown, but he was no doubt one of the most powerful sorcerers ever on Azeroth. His mother literally said he is more powerful than her, and she defeated the Avatar of Sargeras. The only thing that undermines his strength is that he was defeated by Lothar and Khadgar, but before his supposed death, he had accomplished many things. Among one of the things, he literally opened a dark portal that managed to allow the entirety of the Orcish horde to pass through and to scorch the entire zone. In terms of straight up power, he turned a group of merchants into Death Knight like Dark Riders with a single spell, and there was an old bit of lore how he summoned a gigantic beetle that was literally turned into an island, but I feel like this bit might have been retconned. He communicated with Gul'dan, worked with demonic magic, and was possessed by Sargeras himself, which is more than almost any other warlock in the universe has going for them. Number 4. Kel'Thuz. I know everyone here will say he is a mage, not a warlock, but is he really? Kel'Thuz was a blood mage, one of the finest mages of the entire alliance, and a senior member of the Kirin Tor, and as Quel'Thalas fell, he had abandoned the arcane and turned towards demonic energies. As classes are not so black and white in game, if you have a mage using demonic magics and later on turning nearly half demon, what is he if not really a warlock? As Sunwell fell, he searched for a way to ease the hunger of his people, ultimately venturing to Outland and joining Illidan and siphoning fel magic. However, his plans became quite different as he later betrayed Illidan and began working for Kil'jaeden directly, having been granted a lot more power. He attacked Shatterat and Tempest Keep, ultimately leading the Draenei to breach Azeroth and to progress their story as they had. After being defeated in Tempest Keep, he somehow managed to survive, having his appearance completely changed due to fel magic. He returned to Quel'Thalas, assaulted his own kingdom, and almost managed to summon Kil'jaeden into the world. However, as he was defeated, Kel'Thuz could be found in the Shadowlands as one of the most powerful souls to arrive, having caught the eye of Sire Denatrius himself. He then amplified his sins and almost destroyed his souls, only to ultimately be freed by us. Even as a mage, he was one of the most powerful on all of Azeroth, with incredible abilities and being able to destroy orcs with a single spell. As I mentioned, classes are very vague in WoW, but in my opinion, Kel'Thuz was ultimately a warlock by definition. I mean, this guy almost managed to summon the second in command to Sargeras, and just by the fact that the Denatrius decided to pick him out of so many other souls that arrive from the entire universe should tell you just how powerful Kel'Thuz really is. Number 3. Gul'dan. There are two Guldans, both incredibly powerful, although the alternate one is definitely more powerful than the other. The two stories conflict often, but they match for the most part. Gul'dan was exactly what an orc should not be: a weakling, a schemer, and a backstabber. However, these skills were exactly what was needed as he got in touch with the Legion and acquired demonic powers. He was directly responsible for essentially enslaving the entire orcish race, creating the original horde and leading the invasion of Azeroth. In the initial story, he raised the Tome of Sargeras in search for artifacts and was killed by demons, and his skull was used as a very powerful artifact. In the alternate storyline, he was sent to Azeroth after failing to take over Draenor, and he had nearly conquered the planet but was once again defeated. Despite failing, Gul'dan was literally the most powerful mortal warlock ever, hands down. First off, while he was weak physically, he was incredibly powerful and could literally drain the life of most enemies on sight. His magics are responsible for the destruction of Draenor. He literally raised the tome from under the sea. Then alternate Gul'dan was crazy empowered by the Legion, and he literally blasted Varian, one of the most powerful warriors ever, with a single touch. Even before the full empowerment, he was as powerful as Khadgar, as we have seen in their battles. Despite being the most powerful warlock, hands down, at least for the mortal ranks, in a straight-out battle, his main power came from scheming and backstabbing ways, as after all, the original one was defeated by Doomhammer. Even though Gul'dan lost essentially 2 times, you can't really say that he failed, as after all, the original horde nearly destroyed the human kingdoms, and the alternate one did quite a bit of damage on Draenor as well as on Azeroth. Number 2. Archimonde. The Defiler, the Eredar overlord of the Legion forces and the former leader of Argus. As Sargeras offered him unprecedented power, he together with Kil'jaeden joined. If Kil'jaeden is the right hand, Archimonde would be the left. While his brother was cunning and manipulative, Archimonde was also intelligent, but was more of a direct frontline general known as the Mad Warlord and the Fist of Sargeras. In fact, he was so brutal and heartless that almost any failure to do with what he said would result in death. Archimonde was also incredibly powerful both physically and as a sorcerer. First off, he was one of the most powerful mages in the universe. Then he consumed ungodly amounts of hell and became one of the strongest Warlocks in all of existence. Really, he and Kil'jaeden are like 2 levels or like 10 levels different when compared to other mortal Warlocks. Archimonde snapped the neck quite easily of the ancient Malorne. He literally destroyed countless worlds as a general, and as you might have seen, he just shattered the entirety of Dalaran with a single spell by playing with a little sandcastle. Then all the heroes and the best mages and shamans such as Jaina, Troll, and Malfurion fought him, but not even that was enough, and it took the entire world tree just to defeat his form. Now, in Warlocks of Draenor, he was defeated by us with the help of other notable figures and the entire Orc and Draenei armies. Now, despite his relatively easy defeat, which I mainly attribute to just bad writing, Archimonde was one of the strongest, not just Warlocks, but beings in the entire universe across the entire cosmology chart. And lastly, number 1, Kil'jaeden. Actually, one of the 2 leaders of Argus, alongside Velen, with Archimonde only later becoming a ruler himself. Kil'jaeden was one of the finest mages of all time that became the right hand of Sargeras, as he was empowered by him to the absolute max. While Archimonde was the frontline commander, Kil'jaeden was the deceiver, the guy behind the scenes, the manipulator. He recruited like half the Burning Legion, he got the orcs to defeat the Draenei and invade Azeroth, he supposedly created Lich King, although that is a bit challenged now, and orchestrated a million different actions helping Sargeras conquer countless planets. Even in straight-out combat, Kil'jaeden is no doubt incredibly powerful, albeit we never saw too much action including him, seeing that he literally just created a Lich King from Ner'zhul, so you could guess how powerful he really was as a villain. He also empowered Gul'dan and allowed him to do essentially anything notable he did. Now, I know people might say, how is he the most powerful warlock of all time when we literally just defeated him in a raid group? But keep in mind, we didn't defeat him. It was Illidan, Khadgar, Velen, and us with incredibly powerful artifacts from all over Azeroth that possess incredible power. I also think Blizzard just nerfed him lore-wise in order to progress the story, but he was essentially the second in power when compared to Sargeras and had aspirations to take over the entire Legion. Whether he was more powerful than Archimonde, it is really hard to say, so I'd say the number 1 and 2 on this list is a really close match, but I would say he was more intelligent and more than likely more well-versed in magic and spell and top 10 strongest mages in World of Warcraft, focusing only on humanoid mages and not characters that later progressed into other classes. So without further ado, let's get into the lore. Number 10. Grand Magister Romat. As a very talented mage, Romat spent a significant amount of time in Dalaran honing his craft. His power was very formidable, earning him the rank of an Archmage, which very few can ever achieve. During the tragic Scourge invasion of Quel'Thalas, Romat was present in Silvermoon and was in charge of the city's defenses. He played an important role in evacuating the survivors to the Isle of Quel'Thalas, even though he couldn't really stop the Scourge. As his predecessor Bel'Ovir died, Romat became the Grand Magister and a very close advisor to Prince Kael'thas. He followed him to Outland, although unlike most of the expedition, he had to return to Azeroth in order to teach the majority of the Blood Elves that remained the new ways of magic given to them by Illidan. While there, he helped his people reclaim their fallen kingdom and get rid of the remnants of the Scourge. When Kael'thas betrayed his people, Romat was devastated, but nonetheless remained loyal to Silvermoon and the Blood Elves. Since then, he played a part in almost every major event that occurred on Azeroth in the past 10 years, including the recent Burning Legion invasion. Romat is an Archmage and the current leader of all of the Blood Elven Magi, making him one of the strongest alive wizards of the Horde. Number 9. Ronin. Ronin was once a talented young mage with a very promising future. However, during the Second War, when casting a spell against a band of orcs, he inadvertently killed his companions. This lost him the trust of the Kirin Tor, and it took quite some time until he was given a chance to redeem himself on a near-suicide mission in Khaz Modan. He helped free Alexstrasza and defeat the orc captors. This action regained his prestige and his position within the mage hierarchy. Later on, Ronin played an even more significant role as he was transported back into the War of the Ancients, where he helped heal a rift in time that could have been devastating on the world of Azeroth. Not long after, Ronin became the leader of the Kirin Tor during the campaign against Arthas in Northrend. Not only did he help in the battle against the Scourge, but he also helped with the planetary origination signal from Ulduar. However, when the Horde attacked Terramore, Ronin bravely sacrificed himself against the mana bomb, confining the explosion and saving Jaina Proudmoore. Even though deceased, Ronin went down in history as one of the most powerful and accomplished mages on Azeroth. Number 8. Antonidas. Ever since he was a boy, Antonidas was one of the most promising students. At the age of 12, he already received a prestigious award from the Kirin Tor. As Antonidas grew older, he honed his abilities, and it was not long until he became an important part of the Dalaran hierarchy and later on the very leader of the Kirin Tor. Before the Second War, he pledged the loyalty of Dalaran to the Alliance in order to battle the incoming orcish threat. As the orcs were defeated eventually and rounded into interminant camps, he then did significant studies on them and the fell magic they were infected by. After the war and during the Scourge invasion, he remained as the leader of Dalaran, even though his health was already starting to significantly dwindle. Antonidas became obsessed with researching the plague and its properties that he ignored the warnings from Medivh in disguise. He did realize his mistakes later on when Arthas laid siege to Dalaran and he convinced Jaina to depart for Kalimdor. Antonidas then created a powerful magical barrier around the city, but sadly it was not enough to stop the endless undead scourge. Eventually, the defenses were completely shattered and Arthas murdered Antonidas, who decided to hold his ground in his own city. Today, he is remembered as one of the most important mages of Azeroth and is held in high regard by the Kirin Tor and the city of Dalaran. Number 7. Archmage Modera. As a member of the Council of Six, Modera has been active through Azeroth's most perilous times. She played a part in discovering Deathwing, banishing Kel'Thuzad, and even standing against the Scourge invasion of Dalaran. When the city was ultimately destroyed, she stayed inside Dalaran and survived. Some years later, Modera took part in the defense of the new Dalaran against the Blue Dragonflight when it was moved above Crystal Song Forest. As one of the top mages of the Kirin Tor, she was a crucial part in many of the political affairs, most importantly the banishing of the Blood Elves from the city, as well as leading an expedition into the Isle of Thunder against Lei Shen. Modera then followed up on the offensive against the Iron Horde and the Legion on the alternate world of Draenor, ultimately returning to defend Azeroth against the Legion. Recently, she was a crucial part in forming the Terrace Guard and strengthening the world's defense. Even though not really in the spotlight like many of the other mages, Modera has played a part in some of the most important events on Azeroth, with even Jaina acknowledging that she is more powerful than she seems. Number 6. Alodi. Alodi was a half-elven mage that never really knew his real parents. He was raised in the Dalaran orphanage, but due to his mixed ancestry, no one really expected him to have any potential. Nevertheless, the young mage was fascinated with frost magic because of the staff Ebonchill, which was the only connection he had to his biological parents. As a young adult, he made one of the most important leaps in the technology of Dalaran, and that was changing the Council of Tirisfal and the way the Spearhead worked. This essentially created the Guardian system and the way the other mages could transfer power in a form of a council while being at a very safe distance. Alodi became the very first Guardian of Tirisfal, and this tradition would last for thousands of years. As a Guardian, he continued to develop his mastery of frost magic, enhancing Ebonchill with his own powers. After 100 years, he passed down his title of the Guardian and at some unknown point in time died. However, his spirit was forever bound to the Forge of the Guardians, meaning that the Kirin Tor could contact him. Very recently, he appeared in the Violet Hold and infused the adventure in order to defeat the invading Dreadlord. Alodi, even though his spirit essentially immortal, is one of the most important mages that ever lived on Azeroth, known for becoming the very first Guardian of Tirisfal. Number 5. Jaina Proudmoore. Born only 3 years prior to the First War, Jaina is one of the most accomplished young mages. She was a direct apprentice to Antonidas, the leader of the Kirin Tor, and with natural magical talent, it wasn't long until she became one of his most trusted agents. Because of this, Antonidas sent Jaina to examine the plague, discovering the heart of the scourge that devoured Lordran. Seeing all of this, she led as many survivors as possible to Kalimdor, eventually forming the city of Terramore. While there, one of her biggest accomplishments ever was helping put an end to Archimonde and the Legion invasion that was very close to destroying all of Azeroth. Later on from Terramore, Jaina became an important part of the diplomatic relations between the Alliance and the Horde, but when Garrosh took over, there was nothing she could do to stop him. Garrosh invaded Terramore and dropped a devastating mana bomb on the city. Jaina did manage to survive, but this experience drastically changed her both mentally and physically. Due to the death of Ronin, she became the leader of the Kirin Tor for a time, but ever since this tragic event, instead of being neutral, diplomatic, she has been leaning more and more onto the Alliance side. Today, she is fighting the Burning Legion, and her future is very unpredictable, but there is no doubt that Jaina Proudmoore is one of the most powerful and most accomplished mages, especially considering her current age. Number 4. Khadgar. Khadgar was an apprentice of Medivh and a very unique character. When he discovered that Medivh was possessed by Sargeras, he helped defeat him. However, in the process, he was cursed to look much older at a very young age. Nevertheless, that didn't stop him from accomplishing incredible feats of strength, such as destroying the Dark Portal during the Alliance expedition to Draenor. He stayed for a while on Outland after the planet was shattered, learning much from the Naaru, later returning to the world of Azeroth. He once again came back to Draenor, this time the alternate universe, where he played a very crucial role in the campaign. Today, Khadgar is leading the Kirin Tor in Dalaran and is the central figure in the resistance against the Burning Legion. The most notable battle he led is the assault on the Broken Shore, where the conflict is ongoing. Khadgar is the most accomplished mage on the world of Azeroth and a very powerful one as well, with Medivh even saying that he would make a better guardian than himself, even though lacking the power of the Tiris Fallen. Number 3. Aegwynn. Magna Aegwynn was the most powerful female mage of Dalaran. She became the last traditional guardian as she refused to return her powers due to a lack of trust in the council as well as Sargeras-induced paranoia. Her most notable achievement was fighting and defeating the actual avatar of Sargeras, ultimately creating the Tome of Sargeras on the Broken Shore. Aegwynn formed Karazhan and evaded the council for many years that sought to capture her and force her to return to her guardian powers. After a very long journey, she decided to pass down her energy to her son Medivh, giving up the mantle of the guardian on her own terms. Unfortunately, she also transferred the essence of Sargeras that had been lingering inside her ever since the famous battle centuries ago. Aegwynn ultimately sacrificed herself in the fight against Cho'Gall at a very late stage in her life. With the Guardian powers and even later after the powers, Aegwynn was an incredibly strong mage, being able to resurrect her son Medivh and cast devastating magic. Today, the history she created a long time ago is playing a significant part in the current invasion of the Burning Legion. Number 2. Medivh. Medivh was the final guardian of Tirisfal and the one who really ended the 1,000-year-old tradition. From his very birth, he received incredible powers from the council and the essence of Sargeras transferred from his mother. These two combined made Medivh insanely powerful, yet no one ever really knew the extent of his true power. After he opened the Dark Portal, he was defeated by Anduin when they learned about his mind being possessed by Sargeras. Some years later, he was resurrected by Aegwynn, and he attempted to redeem himself as a mysterious prophet by warning various parties to sail to Kalimdor in order to create a united force to fight Archimonde. His role there was significant, and most likely if he didn't do what he did, Azeroth could have been destroyed. Very recently, he made an appearance in Karazhan talking to Khadgar, but he is still an incredibly mysterious figure. No one really knows what form he is in and what is really going on with Medivh. In his current state, it is hard to say how powerful Medivh is exactly, or if he even has a portion of his old power power, but before, with both the Guardian enhancement and the Spirit of Sergeras, he was definitely at the time the strongest spellcaster on Azeroth. Lastly, number 1, Queen Azshara. Over 10,000 years ago, Azshara was the queen of the Kaldrai, the strongest Night Elven empire that ruled over a significant portion of Azeroth. She played an important part in the War of the Ancients, as Azshara allied with the Burning Legion, incredibly impressed by their power. As the leader of the Highborn, she was a master of arcane magic, and with the Well of Eternity at her doorstep and at her disposal, her might was endless. The biggest contributor to her power was definitely the gigantic lake of magic, but nevertheless she was also incredibly proficient in ciphering this arcane energy. At the peak and the end of the War of the Ancients, the sundering happened that shattered the world, and Azshara sunk to the bottom of the ocean, turning into a Naga together with her followers. Today, not much is really known about her, apart from being the queen of the Naga and a servant of the old gods. Her current class could possibly be different, but as far as we know, she is still a mage, just in a different form. Instead of being a highborn, she's a Naga, and she is definitely the most powerful mage that ever lived on the world of Azeroth.
Lightly armored assassins ready to attack when least expected, utilizing stealth, poisons, and striking from the shadows. Despite being one of the coolest classes, not many major characters are actually rogues, which makes sense when you think about it, as generally rogues work from behind the scenes and aren't really there taking all the glory. All their power comes from striking when least expected. Compared to most classes, rogues are barely a class. It's more like a really loose way to characterize them, as they can be everything from criminals to wardens to just straight out assassins and just a bunch of other things. However, what are the most powerful rogues out there in the Warcraft lore? Vanessa Van Cleef, the daughter of Edwin Van Cleef that watched him when he was defeated by our forces. She was adopted later on, and when she grew up, she became a leader of the reformed Defiance Brotherhood, as it once again became a serious threat to Stormwind. Vanessa faked her own death and joined the Uncrowned Legion, even fighting the son of Velen, the High General Rakesh, one of the most powerful demons ever, alongside Garona Half-Orcan. She is still active to this day as a part of the Uncrowned, even though we don't really know what she does. While Vanessa is said to not be as skilled in close combat as her father Edwin, she's nonetheless powerful and very skillful in crafting poisons, especially those that cause hallucinations and just straight out insanity. Vanessa even challenged the rogue champion, us the players, in combat, and was originally one of the leaders of the Uncrowned, but Blizzard later removed her. Admiral Titus. As opposed to many of the assassins on this list, this guy is a high-ranking member of the Bloodsail Buccaneers, who are none other than the absolutely most dangerous pirates on all of Azeroth. They are known as the least wealthy of all the pirate groups because these guys don't collect tribute, as no one survives their raids. Fleet Admiral Titus is the leader of those around Booty Bay, and I think that is as much of a description as you would need to see how powerful this guy is. In Legion, he joined the Uncrowned and became one of the leaders of all the rogues as a part of the Council of Shadows. As a pirate, he's experienced in both naval and land combat, and seeing that he survived leading the Scourge that are the Bloodsail Buccaneers, you can imagine he's quite powerful himself. Zul'jin. Everyone knows Zul'jin, but little do people know is that he's listed as a rogue, even though he's really loosely related to them, as he's more considered a warrior or an axe thrower. However, Zul'jin can also be considered a rogue, as he is notable for his stealth and ambush tactics and working from the shadows. He's even known as the Rogue Troll. As a Ramani Troll, he hated the High Elves and mounted many raids on them, which were extremely deadly, which is why they hated him back. He joined the original Horde, was captured by High elves and had to cut off his own arm to escape, and later he launched a new attack only to be defeated in DBC. Zul'jin is known for having captured and tortured Lord Temartheron himself and for constantly resisting high elven ragers and fighting them. And a test to his power is the fact that he challenged other troll warlords to combat, which is how he united the Yamani, and he is someone that has been fighting his whole life. How much he's a rogue? It is hard to tell as we don't have great accounts of his personal combat, but he is without a doubt one of the most powerful ones. Edwin Van Cleef. Interestingly enough, this guy is actually a builder, a guild master of the stonemasons, but all the people know is that prior to that position, he was actually a prominent fighter. Edwin was trained personally as a rogue by none other than Matthias Shaw himself, the head of the SI7. He was put in charge to rebuild Stormwind, but after a dispute over payment and a big injustice, he and his group turned into bandits and a serious criminal organization known as the Defias Brotherhood. Initially, they started as a rebellion, but this guy literally became the top criminal, doing everything you would imagine a serious criminal organization to do, from sabotage to extortion. Later, he was defeated by the Adventurers after being a threat for many years, but little do people know he was also a great fighter himself, which is why he managed to obviously keep the position as the bandit leader. He was said to be very small and wiry with a really common appearance that allowed him to blend in, and he always preferred to take the offensive, fighting dirty as in retreating and then attacking when the enemy is unassuming. Van Cleef also utilized his longbow to surprise enemies so that he can spring forward and do a sneak attack. Unfortunately, we haven't seen him in any notable duels, but you can imagine as the criminal overlord, he had his fair share of fights and had a pretty long reign until we put a stop to him. Jorah Ravenhold. Lord Jorah Ravenhold. Not much is really known of his beginnings, but more than likely he was a noble of the kingdom of Alterac before the fall. However, his rise to fame came as the leader of the Ravenhold, essentially the main guild for thieves and assassins before Legion. They are like the hidden band of assassins that are not exactly unfriendly, but they aren't friendly either, and they're just doing their own thing. Jorah played an important role in fighting the criminal organization Syndicate and even stole Radiant's eggs, which is why he was born in Ravenhold Manor. Later, during the Burning Legion invasion, he became the leader of the Uncrowned, a new rogue organization meant to defend Azeroth. As Jorah personally described it, they are the slayers of kings, downfall of empires, and the unseen blades that write the true history of this world. Now, not that much is known about his own physical prowess, but I guess you can just imagine. Jorah Ravenhold is a guy that has led a band of super dangerous assassins that are the best at their job and then formed a new order of even more ultra dangerous rogues and criminals. So yes, you can imagine he would be quite powerful to be able to exert authority over these very powerful individuals. Maiev. So, once again, this is one of those rogues that are not actually a rogue, as she's a warden, but she is grouped in the game as a rogue because, as I said, this is a very loose characterization. Aside from being the oldest on this list, she also has the most experience, without a doubt. Initially, Maiev was a priestess, having fought against the original Burning Legion invasion of Azeroth, but later, Maiev would become known as she was the leader of the new elite force known as the Watchers, charged with looking over Illidan's prison. As you may know, he escaped. She chased him all the way to Outland, where she was captured herself. Then she was freed and fought against the newest Burning Legion invasion, and later was an alliance commander in the most recent faction conflict, and she was responsible for the retaking of Darkshore for the alliance. We have seen Maiev fighting a million times, fighting everything from gigantic demons to demon hunters to regular enemies, and in many cases she has been able to fight multiple opponents at once. Maiev is able to teleport short distances, uses a very strange weapon as a warden, and throws knives that can easily eliminate multiple opponents at the same time. Even though she prefers to strike from a position of surprise, she's more than capable of fighting face to face and is one of the greatest rogues that are currently alive. Matthias Shaw. the man from the shadows, the leader of the SI7, the Stormwind Secret Services. This guy is legit one of the most powerful people in any faction overall, as he always knows what is going on behind the scenes, who is scheming what, and he is always scheming something himself. However, Matthias Shaw is also an assassin himself and an excellent rogue. In fact, he personally trained Edwin Van Cleef and he did many missions himself, assassinating multiple targets. There were times where Matthias faced off against many opponents such as the Twilight's Hammer Clan and successfully managed to defeat all of them. Nonetheless, Matthias Shaw is mainly known as the rogue, the guy that orders assassinations, and as the mastermind, he is without a doubt skilled in all the stealth tactics necessary, making him one of the most powerful rogues in World of Warcraft. Valeera. Most of you guys know her from Hearthstone, but she is actually one of the most powerful rogues ever. When Valeera was young, she was sold to become a gladiator, fighting alongside Varian Vryn, having defeated many powerful opponents in the arena. Eventually, as they escape, she became something of a bodyguard for Varian and later down the line Anduin. She was present in Wrath of the Lich King and joined the Uncrowned Legion as one of the leaders. There, she defeated Akari Shadowgore, one of Sargeras' best assassins, and helped cleanse the wound corrupted by the sword in Silidus. Then, Valeera was present, loyally serving Anduin through the faction conflict, and he had a really minor role in Shadowlands. However, Valeera Sanguinar is known as one of the most famous and one of the most powerful of rogues in the entirety of Warcraft. She faced off against multiple opponents in the arena, fought N'Zoth and the Old God forces, the Twilight's Hammer Clan, demons, and a bunch of other enemies. Lillian Voss. One of the most powerful rogues currently active and also one of the leaders of the Forsaken after the fall of Sylvanas. So, originally, Lillian was a Scarlet Crusader that was forcibly raised into a Forsaken who could then order her execution. For this, Lillian Voss undertook a single-minded crusade against the Scarlet Crusade and the Necromancers and managed to kill her father Benedictus Voss, managed to kill a bunch of Scarlet Crusaders herself, and ultimately the very powerful High Inquisitor Whitemane. She then assassinated a headmaster of necromancy in Scholomance, hunted necromancers on Draenor, joined the Uncrowned Legion, and was a major character in BFA and later part of the Shadowlands. Despite being one of the leaders of the Uncrowned and the Forsaken, aside from being a political figure, she is also personally one of the strongest rogues out there, with a ton of experience, having proven herself in combat time and time again. At the moment, Lillian Voss is the most powerful and important undead rogue out there. And lastly, Garona Half-Orcan. Garona is a half-orc, half-Draenei with an incredibly tragic past that was raised in a barracks to become the most ferocious fighter possible, to ultimately be used by Gul'dan. Garona is most notable for assassinating the father of Varian, Lane Vryn, but her fate changed later on as she had a son with Medivh that is now half-Ratcon, known as Medan, and together with him, she fought against the Twilight's Hammer Clan. Later, she joined us in the battle against Deathwing, who joined the Uncrowned, the rogue organization from Legion, and most importantly, she was active in BFA as well as up to this point as well. Garona is thought to be one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful rogue out there, because a lot of the other rogues are notable political figures or influential ones, but she is just an actual fighter. There was a time an ogre, an orc, a tauren, a night elf, and a forsaken as a part of the Twilight's Hammer Clan attacked her son, and she managed to defeat all of them. Garona attempted to assassinate Varian and almost managed to kill the giant ogre Cho'Gall himself. In Legion, she managed to infiltrate Stormwind and to fight against the High General Akish of the Burning Legion. So right now, she may just be the most powerful rogue out there with a ton of actual live combat experience. Hunters are one of the most interesting classes in the game. Despite being relatively simple, the term Hunter is very undefined and vague in all actuality. A lot of characters in the lore are considered to be hunters, yet they're everything from rangers to beastmasters to riflemen, all fundamentally quite different. Nonetheless, some of them are incredibly influential and are among the most powerful characters in the entire game, at least from the mortal side. So, taking the umbrella term into consideration, let's examine what are the strongest hunters in the lore. Number 10. Hemet Nessingwary.
the enemy of nature, the great game hunter, also known as the greatest hunter in all of Azeroth. Hemet Nesingbury is the definition of a hunter, like in the literal sense. We've seen this guy pretty much everywhere we went, from Classic to Northrend to Pandaria and even Battle for Azeroth. Despite being arguably the most influential hunter out there, he isn't exactly a powerhouse himself. He's more of an Azeroth celebrity, a rich dwarf constantly leading safaris with a group of other hunters all across Azeroth and even other worlds. However, that doesn't mean that Hemet is just a figure, as we know that he participated in some battles, most notably the battlefields of Lordaeron, as well as against the Burning Legion, most likely sometime during the Third War, although we don't really know any of the details. In terms of his hunting adventures, Hemet Nesingbury is literally all about hunting big game, the scariest and the wildest creatures that few dare to even venture close to, let alone hunt. These endeavors of hunting rare animals drew the ire of many, earning himself the title the Enemy of Nature. It even went so far that Dechta, the druids for ethical and humane treatment of animals, was created just to counter him and his counters. So, despite not being really a powerhouse, Hemet Nesingbury is one of the most influential and most powerful hunters across all of Azeroth. Number 9. Veressa Windrunner. The youngest of the sisters, she is of the fabled Windrunner bloodline. Unlike her older sisters, Veressa didn't acquire a ton of experience, and neither was she a general or was very highly ranked. In fact, it was only a bit prior to the Second War that she joined the Farstriders' elite rangers. Her first rise to prominence was when she accompanied Ronin in what turned out to be a simple escort quest, but ultimately it turned out to be an adventure unlike no other. She helped him acquire the Demon Soul and battle Deathwing, and following that, the two got married. Veressa was among the few prominent survivors of the Scourge invasions, and she would also venture to Grimbatal, battling dragons. Following that, she created the Silver Covenant, which opposed the inclusion of Blood Elves into the Kirin Tor, which later on proved right to her as the bombing of Terramore happened, and she became even more militant than she was before. Since then, Veressa participated in almost all events thus far, from helping us defeat Lei Shen, to the war against Garrosh, to Argus, and most recently, the battle for Azeroth. When compared to her sisters, Veressa is the only ranger that is still a ranger and a hunter, and she isn't almost an entirely different class, although I'd say she's the weakest out of the Windrunner sisters, but she is nonetheless powerful just as a Windrunner. Number 8. Halduron Brightwing. Originally just a Farstrider that was quite influential, but nothing too out of the ordinary, he fought the Amani and joined in the Orcish Wars. During the Second War against the Orcish Horde, he reached the title of Lieutenant, and just as the Third War was about to begin, Halduron became a Ranger Captain. As a Ranger Captain, he participated in the desperate defense of Voltalas and was among the few notable survivors of the slaughter. As the Ranger General Sylvanas fell and Lord Teron took on the role of the ruler of the Blood Elves, Halduron became the new Ranger General. Since that point, he was a part of most events that occurred, as he was essentially one of the leaders of the Blood Elves as well. In Legion, he represented the Farstriders of the Unseen Path, which is the Union of Hunters, and most recently, he participated in the Fourth War. Despite being a political figure, he is a master of both ranged and melee combat, and we have seen him wield literally every weapon imaginable, from spears to bows and daggers and everything else. Halduron is also extremely skilled in deception, traps, tactics, and is one of the most skilled military personnel of not just the Blood Elves, but of the entire Horde. General Brightwing has been a part of the Warcraft lore for almost 2 decades now, but despite not having much of a spotlight and not really being that popular, he's one of the most powerful rangers and hunters out there. Number 7. Huln Highmountain. The Eagle Spear and the most influential Tauren ever, and one of the most notable hunters of all time, Huln Highmountain reached his glory during the War of the Ancients as he united the warring Tauren clans under his new-formed Highmountain tribe. Then he faced off the biggest demonic invasion ever, hand to hand. He fought alongside Geralt Shadowsong, the Wild God Omen. He protected Malfurion during a critical moment and helped defeat the Dreadlord Tychondrius. His biggest moment was during a battle in Ashara, as well as in the final battle of the war at the Well of Eternity, where he fought a Doom Lord that had sworn to eradicate the Tauren race. For his achievements, Huln was granted the Blessing of Cenarius, and his homeland was renamed High Mountain in his honor. As he returned home, he faced off and banished Deathwing, and as he died, his spirit traveled to Ardenwell. There is absolutely no doubt that Huln is considered the greatest Tauren of all time, and the High Mountain today are descended directly from him. Despite his mythical status as a political figure, he was also incredibly powerful as a hunter, wielding Talon-Claw, the Eagle Spear, and facing off against enemies that few mortals would even dare to stand against. Most notably, he managed to stab the Doom Lord in the eye, forever taking his sight, as well as protecting the Tauren race. Now, in Shadowlands, we'll most likely see him in Ardenwell, as he is a member of the Wild Hunt, a group of the finest hunters in the entire universe that serve the Winter Queen only in times of dire need to defend the forests of the afterlife. Number 6. Lortimer Theron, the Ranger Lord and the leader of the Blood Elves. Early on, as a member of the Farstriders and a lieutenant, he clashed often with Yamani, eventually getting caught and was tortured by Zul'jin himself. Throughout the years, he rose in ranks, and during the Second War was a captain, and subsequently was the second in command to Sylvanas, the Ranger General. In the absence of Keltas, he was a temporary leader of the Blood Elves, but ultimately became the actual ruler, as Keltas had betrayed his people and was thus killed. Since then, he has been around in essentially everything that happened, most notably rebelling against Garrosh, helped us defeat the Legion, fought the Alliance, fought Ashara and Azot, and rebelled against Sylvanas Windrunner. Now, as we venture into the Shadowlands, he's directing us towards our very first missions against the invasion of the Scourge. The thing about Lortimer, despite being the actual leader and now a member of the Horde Council, he also personally has a ton of battle experience, and I do mean a ton. This guy battled everyone from trolls to orcs to undead to demons and literally everything in between. He is one of the most powerful rangers of all time, and despite being highly skilled, he is often described as more of a spellbreaker than a hunter, often preferring melee combat as he is very proficient with a sword. Now, most of Lortimer's power definitely comes from his political role, as he is one of the most influential figures of the Horde, but make no mistake, Lortimer is one dangerous and skilled individual. Number 5. Chandris Feathermoon. Chandris Feathermoon is a legendary hunter and possibly the most accomplished one on all of Azeroth, as she is thousands of years old. Her humble beginnings date back to the War of the Ancients, when she lost her family and participated in the conflict as a young Night Elf. Her presence was most notable during the final battle, as she, together with the Night Elven Resistance, faced off the army of Archimonde and dropped dozens of demons with her arrows. Then, as Legion was defeated and the Sentinels were formed some 600 years later, she became a captain of the army. During the War of the Satyrs, she played a key role and also fought against the Vorgen, the first ever Vorgen, most notably Alpha Prime. During this time, Chandris was adopted by Tyrande and served as her right hand for thousands of years. Chandris would rise to prominence once again during the Third War, where she was in almost all battles, most notably the final stand against Archimonde, as he was trapped by the World Tree. Subsequently, she now became the general of the Sentinels and literally participated in almost everything that involved the Night Elves ever since. She faced off Garrosh's invasion, defended Terra Mor, ventured to alternate Draenor. Additionally, Chandris represented the Sentinels in the Unseen Path, the union of all hunters of Azeroth, fought against the Legion, and most recently participated in the latest Horde and Alliance conflict. Most notably, Chandris' role was key in the battle for Darkshore, as she aided Tyrande in becoming the Night Warrior. Then, she was present during the Sylvanas and Varrock Magara, and will now play a role in the Shadowlands. So, if you haven't figured it out by now, Chandris Feathermoon is one of the most seasoned veterans with thousands of years of experience, like 10,000 years. She is powerful, not just as a general, but directly in combat, facing off against demons, undead, satyr, Vorgen, and everything in between. Number 4. Nathanos Blightcaller. Nathanos Morris was one of the most unique humans in all of history. He was the first and the only human ranger trained directly by the High Elves, more specifically Sylvanas Windrunner. Many elves opposed the fact that Sylvanas included him, but nonetheless his accomplishments were unprecedented. Nathanos was a tactical genius and was responsible for Alliance victories spanning a decade of conflict. Due to feeling unwelcome with the elves, he spent most of his time in Lordaeron, and as the Undead Scourge crisis occurred, he was among the first of all overpowered by an abomination. For a while, Nathanos was just a mindless ghoul, all until Sylvanas broke free from the Lich King and searched for him specifically. As she freed him, she turned him into her champion and her right hand. From that point forward, Nathanos became instrumental in all of her plans. Initially, Varian and Bolvar themselves put a price on his head, and by the time of Cataclysm, he was essentially the second in command with the Forsaken. Blightcaller trained a new generation of Forsaken Rangers and played a critical role in all of Sylvanas' campaigns. Also, as he was so close to her, he was no doubt one of the selected few that knew about her deal with the Jailer. Nathanos was and still is insanely loyal to the Banshee Queen, and his role was key from Cataclysm up to the Battle for Azeroth, and will no doubt be in the Shadowlands as well. We've seen him fight on many occasions, from Darkshore and the Burning of Teldrassil to Zandalar and Kul Tiras. Most recently, as Sylvanas ventured into the Maw, Nathanos was essentially baiting us at his old home, which led the Argent Crusade Horde in the Alliance to launch a direct attack on him. He was easily dealing with all of us until Tyrande ambushed him, and with the power of the Night Warrior that we had yet to learn about more, Nathanos was quite easily dealt with and was ultimately killed. However, all of this really seemed like this was his plan all along, as he said that she allowed him to get back with Sylvanas. As a hunter, Nathanos was incredibly powerful, as well as a Dark Ranger. We did see him deal with some magic, but throughout all of our encounters with him, he was mainly just a ranger with a bow, a very skilled one and a very powerful one as well. Most recently, he was no doubt empowered by the Jailer, which is why he was capable of dealing with us so easily, but even before, Nathanos Blightcaller was one of the strongest hunters around. Number 3. Rexxar. One of the most unique characters in the entire franchise, Rexxar is one of the few remaining members of the Mok'Nathal clan, a half-ogre, half-orc, and most importantly, a beastmaster. A type of a hunter with a strong affinity for the wilderness and the wild animals. He joined the Horde almost at the start, but was disappointed quite early on. He ventured through the portal during the First War, participated in the Second, and briefly returned to Draenor. For a while, Rexxar was stationed with Grom on Azeroth, and he had already grown tired of the constant orcish brutality and the crimes they were committing, but as an orcish warlock drained the life of his wolf companion, he slew him and shortly after abandoned the Horde and departed directly for the wilderness. After a while, Rexxar found Troll's Horde, and completely randomly he became his #1 champion, and one of the main reasons the Horde was able to establish itself in Durotar. After that, he once again returned to the wilds, and he played minor roles throughout the expansions, most notably returning Legion as he joined the Hunter organization. After that, during Battle for Azeroth, Rexxar had more of a hands-on approach. He helped us during many missions fighting against the Alliance, as well as ultimately rebelling against Sylvanas. Now, we don't know what the future holds for him, but the Unseen Path considered him one of the greatest hunters of all time, and he definitely is. First off, Rexxar is gigantic as a half-ogre. He can wield many weapons, he can coordinate with a wide range of animals effectively, and we have seen many of his personal achievements, one of them defeating an ogre warlord in a duel, as well as fighting against Kul Tirans. Despite being a beastmaster, Rexxar is one of the purest hunters on this list, and also one of the most powerful. Number 2. Alleria Windrunner. Alleria is the oldest of the Windrunner sisters, and despite her mother's wishes for her to become a Ranger General of the army, she instead joined the Fast Riders and became a Ranger Captain. Alleria amassed a ton of experience fighting trolls and ultimately joined the Orcish Wars. Despite not being ordered to, Alleria led her Rangers to join the Alliance of Lordaeron, helping turn the tide of the war. Due to losing her mother and brother in the conflict, she was driven by revenge, and therefore, together with Tyrellian in the expedition, she ventured beyond the Dark Portal. Then, after the planet was destroyed and completely shattered, she was thought to have been lost forever. That was the official story until Legion, when we reunited with her and realized that in the meantime she could join the Army of the Light aboard the Xanadar. Despite missing for only a decade or two, the time that actually passed was more along the lines of like 500 years. During some of her missions, Alleria began to learn more about the Void, and that it wasn't as evil as the Light had previously presented it. For this, she was imprisoned by the Naru Xera. Ultimately, Alleria helped us defeat the Burning Legion, but as she absorbed the power of the Dark Naru, she became the first ever Void Elf, creating a brand new race essentially by herself. She helped us in the battle for Azeroth, the downfall of N'Zoth, and really became a whole new race and a class for herself. I'd hardly consider her a hunter anymore, far from it really. With some of her powers, she'd be more like a mix between a Shadow Priest, a Warlock, and a Ranger, but the entire Void thing was quite recent. Prior to that, Aleria was in fact a Ranger, and was an incredibly powerful one at that, fighting trolls, orcs, legion, and everything in between with her skills and a bow. And lastly, number 1, Sylvanas Windrunner. Sylvanas is as far from a hunter as you can possibly be at this point, but long ago, she was possibly the most powerful one out there. Member of the prominent Windrunner family, she was the middle sister and joined the Rangers quite early, eventually becoming their leader. As a Ranger General of Silvermoon, she was practically the military leader of the entire High Elven army. She amassed a ton of experience fighting against the Amani trolls, which were a constant threat to the elves, as well as fighting the Orcish horde during one of the most crucial battles of the Second War. Sylvanas' most prominent role was in the Scourge invasion, when she literally gave it her all, cutting down numbers of undead and fighting until the very end. Ultimately, however, she was killed, raised, and enslaved by Artis Menethil. Eventually, she managed to break free and to establish the Forsaken. Now, at this point, she was more of a Dark Ranger, but she could still loosely be considered a hunter. She had all of her old abilities, but now enhanced by dark magics and a banshee form. At this current point in the lore, I'd hardly say she's a hunter anymore, as she literally allied with the jailer and became one of his closest agents. But if we consider Sylvanas as a Ranger General and early as a Dark Elf, she was one of the most prominent hunters in the history of Azeroth. We've seen her incredible skill with a bow, fighting Gen, and literally obliterating soldiers with her banshee form. Even with daggers, she overpowered one of the strongest warriors, Saurfang, meaning that she's also incredibly skilled in melee, and also obviously overpowering the Lich King, although a big part of that skill can definitely be attributed to the Jailer and their pact. Priests are one of the most versatile classes in the game. They're everything from actual light priests to shadow priests to witch doctors and even priestesses of Elune. Currently, a few are one of the main and key characters in the entire series and will be playing a major role in what is to come in the Shadowlands and beyond, shaping World of Warcraft throughout the years. So let's take a look at what are the most powerful priests in the lore. Number 10, Moira. Moira Bronzebeard was born as a princess to her father Magni, but was ambushed and kidnapped by the Dark Iron clan. Surprisingly, she fell in love with Dagran Torisan, the Emperor, and when her father sent a rescue mission for her, she refused to return and instead fought against the dwarves. Now, as the Dark Irons crumbled after all the catastrophes that hit them, she attempted to take Ironforge and march on it as Magni was turned into a crystal, but she was repelled by the Alliance forces. However, under Varian suggestion, the Council of Three Hammers was formed, and the Dark Iron dwarves rejoined the Dwarven clans, and Moira became one of the rulers and an important figure of the Alliance. Her rise to prominence as a priest was in Legion, as she joined the Conclave and later helped the Dark Iron Dwarves get into the Fourth War. Honestly, not much is known about her as a priest. She is one of the rare Shadow Priests lore figures, and as Moira was not just a member of the Conclave but was one of the secondary leaders, that definitely means she's one of the strongest priests on Azeroth. With her connection to the dark magics of the Dark Iron Dwarves and the Church of the Holy Light through the Alliance and her father, it makes her quite a powerful combination. Number 9, Sally Whitemane. Originally, Sally was a priestess of the light that slowly but surely turned towards madness. She lost her family to the plague of undeath and was forced to destroy them herself, which sparked an intense desire in her to cleanse the undead. Originally, this was noble, as the Scarlet Monastery was the bastion of priesthood, but soon enough, they turned fanatical, and Sally, as one of their leaders, became more and more extreme by the day. They no longer trusted anyone and just started cleansing more innocents than the actual undead. Many times, Scarlet Monastery was invaded, and many times Priestess Whitemane survived. The reason she survived and even kept Scarlet Crusade a thing for so long was due to her immense resurrection powers. The only way we actually managed to make her death permanent was through Lillian Voss. Later on, Sally was resurrected as a Death Knight and currently is one. While she was young and not the most experienced of the priests, she was one of the most influential, fanatical, dedicated, and and powerful. It was her prowess as a priestess and as a leader that led Bolvar to resurrect her and turn her into one of the new 4 horsemen. Number 8. Alonsus Fowl. Literally the priest and the most influential one on all of Azeroth period. Long ago, he was the Archbishop of the Light and even Uther was his apprentice. It was Alonsus Fowl that essentially created the human Paladin Order, the Silver Hand, and his role was critical in the Orcish invasions. At an unknown point in time after these wars, around when Anduin was just a small child, he died. During the Scourge invasion of Lordaeron, he was resurrected as an undead, but later on joined the Forsaken. The role of Alonsus would be the most prominent during Legion, as he helped us defeat the Burning Legion, joined the Conclave, and once again became the Archbishop, this time as an undead. Now, I wouldn't say that Alonsus was a powerhouse himself, but his importance cannot be stated enough. The spiritual leader of the humans, created the Paladins, and apprenticed the most influential and powerful human Paladins of all time. Number 7. Benedictus. Long ago, Benedictus was a student of Alonsus Fowl and pretty much his right hand. He participated in the First and the Second War, and with the death of his mentor, he became the Archbishop of the Church of the Holy Light. It was during the Scourge invasion that his life just changed forever. He started doubting the light after seeing what happened to Arthas and Tyrannus and the innocent people of Lordaeron. His doubt spread as he no longer worshipped the light that could abandon their servants to the undead hordes. Despite being an archbishop, he was not much of a believer, and around the time of the Burning Crusade, the Twilight Hammer started spreading and they just fed his doubts. When Cataclysm came around, he started slowly turning, but ultimately overtook the leadership role of the Twilight Hammer, becoming known as the Twilight Father and later on the Twilight Prophet. He saw the Void as an alternative to the tyrannical light and wanted to remake the universe in what he saw as the natural state of things. Benedictus helped establish and make the cult quite dominant by kidnapping dragons as just one of his actions. He was hell-bent on destroying Thrall as he envisioned the Orc destroying his massive Deathwing, which of course Benedictus was right about, as that is exactly what happened, and as he failed, he wanted to personally assassinate him, but he was ultimately defeated. Of course, the Archbishop went crazy, but with a new Void and Light lore like 10 years later, maybe he wasn't so insane after all. Number 6. Kalia Menethil. The daughter of Tyrannus Menethil and the older sister to Prince Arthas the Lich King. She was thought to have been lost forever as the Scourge invaded Lordaeron, but she in fact survived in a trench and managed to escape and live a life in exile, only to return to the public eye during the Burning Legion invasion. During her exile, she became a priest, ultimately becoming one of the most important ones on all of Azeroth. She partook in the Gathering, an event where the Forsaken would reunite with the Alliance, but as Kalia attempted to just straight out start the rebellion and get the undead to defect to the Alliance, Sylvanas Windrunner flew into the field and personally murdered her. This is where Kalia came to prominence as a priest, as her corpse did not decompose, and with the guidance of Anaru, she became the first ever light undead. Now, there have been undead wielding the light in the past, we have seen that before, but Kalia was quite unique as a Forsaken touched by Anaru. Since then, she participated in the Battle for Azeroth, later on joined the Horde, and became one of the leaders of the Forsaken. Now, in Shadowlands, she participated in the Scourge invasion and ventured to search for Bolvar in Oribos, where she currently is. Power-wise, we don't really know how strong she really is, but as most priests, she is an important figure instead of just a fighter. We know that Kalia Menethil has a unique and strong connection to the light, which lets her avoid death, which just by itself makes her incredibly powerful. Number 5. Vol'jin. I wasn't really sure where to put Vol'jin. He's neither a priest nor a hunter, but is in fact a shadow hunter. However, due to how vague classes are in World of Warcraft, I decided to place him on this list, even though Vol'jin is only loosely a priest, sort of like a shadow priest hunter. Regardless, Vol'jin is the son of the fabled Sen'jin that fell against Naga forces, and thus his son took over the leadership of the Darkspear tribe. For years, he was a crucial advisor to Thrall and one of the most influential figures of the entire horde. However, as Garrosh took over, Vol'jin became the leader of the rebellion, ultimately defeating Hellscream and becoming the war chief himself. Unfortunately, Vol'jin's reign was short-lived as he was on the front lines at the Battle of the Broken Shore and was defeated by the overwhelming number of demonic forces. As he died, he was ultimately manipulated by Muezala, the Loa of Death, and ultimately the Jailer himself in order to turn Sylvanas into the war chief, which in the end orchestrated the current events of the Shadowlands. Despite his death, he never truly died as he was in fact still around as a spirit during the Fourth War and the Battle for Azeroth. Now, I know you might say, how was he powerful as he was defeated by a Legion foot soldier, but keep in mind this was an overwhelming army, and much like Varian, he fought off many of them until an accidental strike happened. Now, we have seen Vol'jin fight on many occasions, from his experience with the monks in Pandaria to the rebellion against Garrosh, and it is safe to say that Vol'jin was one of the most powerful trolls of all time, both as a fighter and as a leader. As I mentioned, Vol'jin is very loosely a priest, but I added him to this list nonetheless because I felt like calling him just a hunter wouldn't do him justice due to his incredible connection with the Loa. Number 4. Talanji. The daughter of the king of the Zandalari Empire Rastakhan, and until recently the princess of the said empire. However, as her father died, she became the queen, the leader of the Zandalari, a member of the Horde Council, and one of the most important figures of the entire faction. Much like Anduin, she is only around 18 years old, but even at that age, she is one of the most powerful priests of all of Azeroth. Troll priests, unlike light priests, are completely different, as honestly they're just bunched up in the game in the same class. Generally, these troll priests worship the Loa, get the powers of the Loa, and they're more witch doctors than servants of the light. Talanji previously served the Loa Rezan, and we've seen the crazy destructive power as she just like obliterated half the Alliance navy, and as her father died, she was bound to Bonsamdi, which granted her even crazier powers. Now, as the leader of the oldest troll tribe, the most influential and now a crucial part of the Horde, she isn't just a regular priest serving a Loa, but a queen representing her people, which grants her a lot more power than a Loa would grant just a regular priest. We don't know much about Talanji in the Shadowlands, but as Bonsamdi is here and he has his own pocket dimension in Outerweald, and we've seen what he did with Muezala, I'm guessing Talanji will be quite prominent. Number 3. Anduin Wrynn. Anduin Lane Wrynn, the son of the fallen King Varian, the High King of the Alliance, and the commander of all Alliance forces. Despite being only around 20 years old in Shadowlands, he's probably the most experienced 20-year-old ever. From a young age, he trained with weapons, but as he was gifted for the light and his potential was known for years as one of the greatest priests of all time. As his father fell on the Broken Shore, he became a king, a very young one, but so far he managed to maintain a very capable leadership. He participated and led all the conflicts thus far, and was kidnapped most recently and kept in the maw by the Jailer. Now, Anduin is thought to possibly be the greatest priest, even though he might even be a paladin at this point, but let's just call him a servant of the light, despite his young age. We have seen Anduin essentially mass resurrect his army at the Battle for Lordaeron, turning the tide of battle, and now he even managed to defy the Jailer's immense power with his light connection that was so strong that it could reach him within the maw. He was taught by Velen himself, the most ancient priest that we know, who saw incredible potential in him, saying that he will be a great king leading the forces of the light and darkness, which honestly, with the way things are lining up with the Void, might even mean that he could play a great role in the future expansion. Thus far, just by the fact that he could use the powers of the light to battle against the Jailer within his domain, means that Anduin is one of the most powerful priests, not just on Azeroth, but in the entire known universe. Number 2. Velen. Long ago, Velen was a mage and one of the 3 leaders of Argus, and thought to have been the wisest and the most powerful of the 3. As Sargeras broke the hierarchy, he escaped together with the Draenei 13,000 years ago and went from planet to planet hiding from the Legion. In the meantime, he turned into a priest, connected with the Naru and the light, became a prophet with the gift of sight and visions into the future. As the Draenei went from planet to planet, they reached Nanor, and as the Orcs invaded them there, they ultimately settled on Azeroth only a few years ago. Now, since then, Velen participated in literally everything that happened and led his people from near extermination to becoming valuable members of the Alliance, and Velen himself was a key factor in the defeat of Kil'jaeden and most recently the imprisonment of Sargeras. He literally was one of the leaders that all orchestrated that entire ordeal, the return to Argus and the defeat of the corrupted World Soul. Now, Velen is probably the oldest and the most experienced priest that we know and that we have ever known. Before he was a priest, he was one of the finest mages in the universe, and then with his direct contact with the light and the Naru, he became a prophet and a priest. I would say he is a powerhouse, but not in the literal sense as in destruction, even though he can definitely deal some damage, but he is more of a leader and a guiding figure, as is usually the role of priests. And lastly, number 1, Tyrande Whisperwind. The High Priestess of Elune, one of the oldest mortals and for a long time an immortal on Azeroth, and currently one of the key characters in the Shadowlands. Tyrande was a priestess and the most devoted follower of the moon goddess Elune. At the same time, she was the general of the Sentinels and the leader of the Night Elves, participating in everything from the War of the Ancients to the Third War and the most recent Burning Legion invasion. We have seen Tyrande fight on a million different occasions, using her moon powers as a priestess, hiding from enemies, destroying foes from demons to undead. She was one of the rare priests that is actually a powerhouse and incredibly potent in terms of destruction. Now, most recently, she became a Night Warrior, the dark incarnation of Elune, and became even more powerful, albeit I say she turned more into a hunter than a priest at this point. However, as in-game and lore classes are different, I don't really think there is that much of a distinction. She still is a priestess and a follower of Elune, just with crazy enhanced powers. We saw how she just shattered Nathanos Blightcaller, one of the most powerful hunters on all of Azeroth, and how she was dealing with enemies left and right. As she is now following the dark side of the moon and she went into the Shadowlands, I expect her role to be incredibly important, especially with the hints that Elune could be a first one or that she could play some very important role, and who better to represent her than one of her most loyal priestesses. Due to her Night Warrior form and powers, I'd say Tyrande is the most powerful priest, not just on all of Azeroth, but possibly one of the most powerful ones in the entire